Okay, cool. I'm going to start this film. Yeah, thank you for the introduction and thank you for inviting me. I'm an artist and I work with digital technology a lot of the time, but I guess at the same time, I'm very critical of digital technology and like how I guess like it's affecting like society maybe at large. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about that and like how it's kind of affected my work, and also talking about how like a new project that I'm going to be doing that's going to be coming to Leicester actually. So I thought this would be a good time to talk about that project because obviously you're all in Leicester, and yeah, sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'm currently kind of based in Helsinki, so yeah, it was a bit difficult for me to get there. So an intro there. I'm just going to play this film in the background, which is just showing like some screen grabs of like various Tumblr sites that I have. I probably have about 60 or so of these sites, which are basically sites where I've collected different images from the internet and just sort of posted them in these kind of image collections. And so a brief kind of introduction to my practice. The digital realm like really transformed the way that I worked as an artist. I used to actually be a painter and like making work, I guess like thinking about making artwork for like my conception of the art world at the time, making it for kind of art galleries, even though I wasn't having exhibitions, but like thinking about like how artwork was kind of shown in art galleries made me very I wasn't kind of like very happy with like thinking about art in this way, because like the way that I made work, I didn't think about it as kind of like finished, resolved pieces. It was much more about the kind of process for me and the kind of like transformation of work like across a kind of like working process, rather than kind of like static resolved works in like art spaces, gallery spaces. So when I kind of started working digitally, it kind of like opened up like a whole new environment for me to work. And I guess like the way that the internet and digital information is kind of fed to us on a daily basis, like this kind of over stimulation and saturation of images and information, kind of like gave me this feeling of like everything, it's like almost like showing like that everything, of course it hasn't been, but everything has kind of like been made before, and like there was all these kind of like possibilities of like all of these different like imagery and so forth, but at the same time very kind of flattening, all seen through this kind of like limited kind of like interface. So I started to think about like making art for digital spaces, like how like art can be distributed in like a different way in which it is like distributed like within the gallery system. I started posting like images of like research and found images on the internet, and thought about like how artwork could be kind of thought about as like, simply a kind of like reposting of an image. And that could be thought about as my work, rather than kind of like creating something. So something that just could be kind of like framed. A bit of context then about my kind of like process. I think like that I'm very much involved now with kind of creating, like I consider my practice a kind of like worlding practice. In other words, like making kind of like environments and worlds that are not kind of confined to, as I say, like these gallery spaces, but kind of like spill out into digital platforms as well as physical spaces. There's lots of elements to them. So there'll be like video installation, there'll be websites online and so forth, and all of the work kind of exists in this I guess like a kind of constellation, kind of constellatory network or something. I mean, I was heavily influenced by like net art and post-internet art. Like post-internet came around like around 2010 to 2013, and then kind of died its death. I mean, I won't like talk about that too much here. But again, like this kind of like way of kind of like framing work and viewing work like online, like it's almost like the documentation of the work, like the image that's shown as the documentation on social media or Instagram or whatever, like almost like replaces the work in the physical location. So yeah, a bit more context about my practice. I'm like shown on the screen now like a various kind of as I say, like Tumblr sites and various images. This one's called Dark Creatures, and often within my work I'm thinking about like the way in which humans how humans kind of like interface with nature in the wider world. And what I mean by nature is that I don't mean nature as something kind of like outside of us. I don't think there is any outside of nature. We are part of this like system. We humans are included within that, and everything that we produce is part of nature as well. But I'm kind of interested in our like limited kind of like perception and limits of our human understanding of nature. So for example, well, not for example, like, you know, like the kind of very big example in this day and age, like thinking like through like the mainly Western colonial scientific like project, like it seeks to kind of identify and categorize and datify sort of everything that exists. It's like everything is becoming like a kind of like branch of computation, and even life itself is being turned into digital data. So thinking about like not only like the capture of like our digital data from our activities online and that kind of tracking, but also thinking like biologically as well, like how our bodies and our genetics and things are also being sort of like redrawn as digital information. And yeah, my work is kind of like very like skeptical of this project. I mean, I think that life is far more complex than this, and it can't possibly be simplified into digital information, sort of zeros and ones. So yeah, I'm going to talk about this new project that I have coming up. I'm aware that I'm not really showing actual artwork because this at the moment is like in the process of being made, so hopefully this is not too boring for me to just talk about it in theory. But yeah, I just want to mention like a couple of quotes by a couple of theorists actually as well. So somebody called Karen Barad, who I really like her writing. She says the deeply connected way that everything is entangled with everything else means that any act of observation makes a cut between what is included and what is excluded from what is being considered. Nothing is inherently separate from anything else, but separations are temporarily enacted, so one can examine something long enough to gain knowledge about it. This view of knowledge provides a framework for thinking about how culture and habits of thought can make some things visible and other things easier to ignore or to never see. And then another quote from a book called Technique and Magic. It says, the notion of measure consists in the original act of cutting up the world in a manner that makes it available to be infinitely recombined. Or more precisely, measure is the act of creating in the world as a catalogue of cuts. While before measure, cutting, no such thing as the world or indeed anything at all actually existed. So I think like what yeah, these two theorists are getting at, and what I'm going kind of like trying to get at within my thinking, as I say, is like that this kind of scientific datafication project seeks to kind of catalogue and map and capture and datify practically everything in the world. And yeah, and as I say, like in reality, like reality is not something that can be quantified like in this way. But of course, as you know, perhaps as you know, as humans, perhaps like we need some systems though of kind of understanding the world around us through language and systems and so forth. So going on to this project. The new project that I'm doing is called Cryptid, and as I say, it's going to be shown in Leicester at Two Queens in autumn. I nearly said the fall, which is like really American. I don't know where I got the from. So cryptid is a word. I really like this word because it sounds like crypto or something, and yeah, sounds a bit mysterious. But cryptid basically means cryptid is a creature, I'll just read this out, which may or may not exist, unrecognized by mainstream science. So cryptozoology is a pseudoscience which looks at anecdotal stories and other claims rejected by the scientific community. And so like, yeah, this goes on to say that like a lot of life on Earth, so an astonishing 86% of all plants and animals on land and 91% of those in the seas have yet to be named and catalogued. So that's the majority of life like on this planet. So I mean, it seems within this kind of like datafication project that, you know, they would have us believe that, you know, everything has been catalogued and, you know, put on Google or something. But actually, in reality, like there is so much that is there that, yeah, that hasn't been kind of observed or mapped. And so, yeah, this project is kind of speculation on these creatures, alongside those that have been scientifically captured and catalogued by mankind. So the exhibition will be this kind of pseudo-scientific landscape of cryptozoology, like showing creatures that are kind of like made up, or perhaps not made up, perhaps they've just not been like discovered, in quotation marks, and then like against the ones that have been yeah, catalogued and fall within this kind of, yeah, this kind of like systems of taxonomy. And the project is inspired by conversations with different researchers, like scientists, marine biologists, policymakers. Mainly I've been having conversations with people that are based in Scotland that work in the North Sea. And they a lot of their research is around like trying to map like whole kind of ecosystems of different species within the North Sea, and like find out how those species kind of interface, like kind of relate to each other, and how like they're affected by certain like different environmental conditions, and the kind of changing industry in the North Sea. So like moving from like oil-based industry to like renewables and things like that. I won't talk too much about this because I don't think it's so relevant for this event, but like some of the like the species that I'm kind of like honing in on for this is like the small stuff, so like plankton, marine plankton, which I find is quite a strange kind of grouping of animals because it includes things like viruses and algae and bacteria, as well as like baby fish and crabs and yeah, baby animals. And the only kind of grouping for this species is the fact that it's small enough to kind of drift along with the ocean currents. So it's not based on, yeah, the kind of grouping of the species. And yeah, I've kind of mentioned like taxonomies as well, like how animals are kind of grouped together into different into different classes and orders and suborders, and this actually being a kind of like, again, thinking about this, like, I mean, I don't know if this like sounds so relevant like in terms of like computation, but I think it is, because I think like datafication seeks to categorize everything and put labels on things. It works through this kind of like recognition, and that only being you know, one possible model, and the problem being when, you know, there is only one model, then that kind of closes down the diversity for other models and other ways of thinking and other ways of producing knowledge. So yeah, just to briefly mention, so like so Carl Linnaeus, I never pronounced that word, was like a Swedish scientist who was working in the 1970s that came up with this kind of system, and that system was very much based on I mean, he was European, he was Swedish, was based on kind of European power and colonialism, and like it very much reflected the yeah, the way that the kind of like world was organized like at the time, and even like kind of brought about the notion of race as well within like categorizing humans. Before that, it didn't exist. Yeah, another thing that we've been researching is the Internet of Underwater Things, which is a you've probably heard of the Internet of Things, where everything is kind of like turned into like smart objects, where different things can kind of like communicate to each other. There's also the Internet of Underwater Things, and which seeks to do the same thing, but obviously like in the marine environment. And again, like the kind of like the criticism here is like, you know, the sea has always been this important area for exploitation, and the push towards mapping and controlling it would make it easier maybe to preserve it, but as well as to kind of like control it and extract from it. And again, like this, yeah, like this notion of like life cannot be modeled or categorized in this one way. And this is like some of the creatures like that I've been studying as part of this project. I won't go into too much detail here. Again, I don't think it's relevant for this event, but yeah, I guess just to mention that these creatures, like they are quite highly studied by scientists. But again, like there's so much that we don't know about these species. Like a copepod, for example, is one of the most I think it has like there's the most copepods on Earth than any other like animal, and scientists are very yeah, interested in this creature and studying them. But they, yeah, there's lots of things that they do. They have like very complex communication systems where they can communicate like over a huge wide area. They can tell each other to kind of like change depth. They can change their sex, and they have all of these kind of, yeah, different amazing things that they can do, and the scientists don't know like how the hell they do them, and they probably will never know. Oh yeah, and then I just wanted to mention, I mean, again, like this kind of notion of like categorization and digitization, and this talk is obviously based on, like, the title of this this event is based on this this essay by Walter Benjamin, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. And I just wanted to mention, I guess, like another theorist that I think like relates to what I'm talking about, although I'm not a theorist, I'm an artist, so bear with me here. I mean, Adorno wrote this like this text, Negative Dialectics, and he was working, he was part of this I guess like philosophical movement called the Frankfurt School, which was the same kind of movement as Walter Benjamin, and he came up with this this notion of identity thinking, which basically means that let me try and explain this. where kind of individual human beings or individual creatures or whatever is kind of like assigned with different classes or categories, and the kind of powers that be that use this kind of like system of categorization can then more easily like treat people as not a unique person but as a kind of like number. And again, it kind of like greatly like oversimplifies like what like diversity, I guess, as well. And so that gives, you know, the powers that be more kind of like advantage and facilitate the manipulation of their material environment. Everything becomes this kind of mere exemplar, it says. And I mean, again, this not kind of like being a reflection of reality, but just of this kind of like classification kind of like framework. And this kind of being this, more, you know, like the powers that be are more able to like express like power and domination over these subjects. And how much time have I had? I've probably got like 5 minutes or something, maybe.
Yeah, about 5 minutes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, again, like bringing in like kind of AI and datafication, like this, you know, just to kind of like mention that again, like this kind of like over identification and AI and data being, you know, a kind of reflection of our own biases and behaviors and neurological processes. And, you know, we should kind of like move away from thinking that, you know, AI is like, you know, artificial intelligence as being this kind of like other sort of like potentially like sentient thing in the future. It's just a kind of like reflection on our own like our own systems. So we need to be very careful of that, and I think, you know, create a way of holding lots of diverse systems within that framework. I mean, I won't go too much into this because I think I'm running out of time, but like, just to introduce like this kind of like notion of black boxing as well, that if a technology is if it's doing its job and it's working, we very often don't question the kind of internal operations of that technology. We don't kind of like assess it or evaluate it like we should anymore. It's just working, it's just doing its job, and we don't kind of question it enough. And that Bruno Latour was a philosopher that talked like a lot about this notion of black boxing as well. I'm just going to skip through these because I'm running out of time. Just to mention a book that I read recently called Technic and Magic, which is a really amazing book, which I think more eloquently probably describes what I'm trying to say, but talks about this kind of like everything being kind of like subsumed by this notion of what Federico calls technic, everything kind of being subsumed by technology, but in reality, like the world is completely ineffable and unquantifiable, and talks about like the world, the actual reality of the world being something like really magical. Another book that I really like is called Atlas of, I can never pronounce this word either, Atlas of Anomalous AI. And I think this book is really great about kind of introducing lots of different systems of knowledge, like throughout the ages, like of kind of quantifying the universe, I guess, like and how we think about the world, but kind of like brings like these diverse systems of knowledge like together, rather than just thinking through like kind of one computational knowledge that we have today. yeah, I think that's it actually. Like, so maybe I'll wrap up there. I mean, I'm aware that I haven't really shown any like artistic work. I mean, I don't know if there's time, like I have actually got like a 3-minute video that I've recently produced about, you know, on this project. Well, it's actually like a music video that I made for somebody, but a lot of the kind of like imagery is the stuff that I've been researching as part of this project. So I could show that if there's time, or I'm happy to go to questions if there isn't time.
I think it's time. Yeah.
Okay.
The video. Yeah.
Now I've got to find it. Can you hear that okay?
No, not at all.
No?
No.
Oh, there's no sound?
There's no sound, Joey.
No sound. Okay, 1 second. This is probably a Zoom thing. This always happens on Zoom. Optimize video. No, that's not it. Okay, well, maybe because this is a music video, like it would be really great to see the sound. So if it's not possible, that's also fine. But I think there's something that I need to click on Zoom to make it work.
Is it down at the bottom of your screen, Joey?
In the share options usually.
It is in the share options, isn't it? That green bar, so she needs to click it. Yeah, Joey, I think you need to click the top green bar.
Okay, yeah. And then
If you stop sharing,
stop sharing, yeah.
and then can you go into your share options and can you enable sound?
Where are the share options?
So if you go down onto, is it share screen? Oh my God, I actually don't know. Yeah, share screen.
But if I just share screen, then it's just gonna share the screen again.
There is, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh, share sound.
Yeah, got it?
Maybe it's this. Advanced. Let me just try this one more time.
That's okay.
Can you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. maybe I'll stop it there because I will run out of time.
That was great. Thank you.
I lost you all as well. Then I was like, oh my God, are they still even there? Because I couldn't see you. So I was like paranoid that I was just playing this video to myself in my sheet.
It's so strange doing these things over Zoom, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm a disembodied person.
Thanks, Joey. Has anyone got any questions before we move on? Yeah, sure.
This was really interesting work. It was very interesting talk. I've got a couple of observations and some suggestions.
Yeah.
Are you here with the work of Genetic Moo?
Genetic Moo?
Yeah, they create micro worlds, sort of artificial ecologies. And
Okay.
You'd really
No, I
enjoy
don't think
their
so.
work. And if you start, I could introduce you. You'd have a great conversation or two. And
Yeah, that would be great.
Boredom Research.
Yes, I've heard it. Yeah, I've met them before. Yeah, I know.
Two artists, or artist groups came, looking at your work, I thought there's a lovely amount of crossover there. So I'd strongly recommend you get in touch with them, or I can pass on their details. And then also looking at your work about the sort of issues, if you like, surrounding our sort of qualitative view of the world, where everything is quantitative view of the world, where everything is a quantity. What you're looking at is broadly called systems theory.
Yeah.
Sort of historical work in systems theory.
Yeah.
That looks at this problem, the problem of measuring the world rather than experiencing the world. And it can be summarized really as a sort of interplay between two things, quantities and qualities. And there might be a physiological reason why we look at the world in those two ways. But the problem is that we obsess about quantities. Our current society is obsessed with quantifying stuff.
Yeah.
Neglected qualities.
Yeah.
So regard qualitative knowledge as important as quantitative knowledge. So when you go and look at a tree or participate in nature, if you're a scientist, it's all about measuring stuff and cutting it up and whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas if you allow the other half of your brain to take over, it would be about the qualities. If you look at a tree, you start to think, well, what does it mean to be a tree? What does it feel like? And what does it smell like? There's a whole area of knowledge that our current society doesn't value. And I think you might find it interesting maybe to sort of look at some of the work that's been done in balancing quantities with qualities.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, if I was to suggest some reading, I would say Fridtjof Capra has captured a lot of this work in some of his works about systems thinking.
Yeah.
So there was two Chilean biologists called Maturana and Varela, and they developed a theory called autopoiesis.
Yeah.
Which is really all about this interplay between the amounts of things and the qualities of things.
Yeah.
So I think you would find it really interesting to look into those areas.
Yeah.
So like
I mean, I have come across a lot of that. I mean, also like, I mean, which, like I can't mention everything in this talk, obviously, because I've only got 25 minutes. But yeah, I mean, like I've done a lot of reading around like cybernetic theory as well, like, and, like how these methods are used to, to influence and control society, I guess, like, but yeah, it's like an area that I am like researching quite a lot, but but it's always good. Like, please send me like other reading material. That would be great.
You're in the right area, and you're doing some really interesting stuff. Maybe another thing to consider is Goethe, who we know as a writer, was also a scientist, but he developed a science of qualities. So he was they call it Goethean science, which is sounds hippie these days. But he would go out into nature when he was trying to make sense of something, and he would feel stuff and taste it and experience it and realize he's part of it. And that was his scientific method. So there are different ways of doing science.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Really good stuff.
Any more questions for Joey while we've got her? Oh, sorry. I saw the one at the back.
So yeah, thanks for the talk. Really looking forward to seeing the exhibition.
Can you hear that, Joey?
Maybe if you repeat it afterwards, it's just because you're quite far back. I think that I can't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering if the ideas you're working with, if that affects the way you think about like the tools or software or even the media generally that you're working with. Or like, yeah, so the subject you're working with, if that plays into the things you're thinking about.
Sorry, can you repeat the last bit? If the like if it affects what, sorry?
So if it's like affecting the tools that you're deciding to work with, makes it work.
Yeah, I mean it's quite like I mean I find myself in this kind of contradictory like position in a way. So like I think it's a good question because I'm like, you know, on the one hand like kind of criticizing the way that like digital computation stuff is kind of systematizing the world, but then at the same time like using these tools myself in my artwork. So I do think about that a lot. And I mean, yeah, this isn't a very maybe this isn't a very like I don't know, like critical or like intelligent comment or something, but like often I kind of I mean maybe it relates to the other comment as well, like but often like I'm kind of very maybe like everybody else as well, feel very trapped in like this digital world or something, and like I don't feel very sustained like by it, like in terms of like, you know, sat in front of the computer every day, like using like digital material, like I think like going out into the world and like I mean obviously like you mentioned like Goethe, like going out and experiencing something and experiencing a tree and things like that is like far more kind of enriching maybe than like being sat on a computer every day. So I think I don't know, like I mean yeah, as I say, like I'm not really but I think it's yeah something that I kind of think about all the time, like that you know like the tools I'm using are the ones that I'm kind of also yeah criticizing. So it's kind of like this weird contradictory kind of position maybe. Yeah, I don't know what more to say about that, but it's a good, you know, it's a good question, it's a good point.
Another question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because obviously a lot of the work deals with the idea of fluidity versus categorization. And I was just curious if like ideas of identity and gender influenced any of your thinking in looking at it in your work, because there seems to be a lot of overlap there.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Like, I mean, I think, I mean, again, it's something that I can't like cover like in one talk, but like a lot of, I've done like other project. I mean, maybe this isn't like totally related. Well, it is. But I mean, I guess like I've done like some other projects that I've done have been very much like about the kind of like construction of certain ideas and certain beliefs within like digital networks, like how kind of yeah, like identity politics and like, you know, like the way that we think about stuff kind of like are, you know, like can be born through like digital networks, and how kind of like persuasive you know like that can be. And yeah, I mean you know like you mentioned like this you know gender and fluidity and like things like that, and I mean again like I think about that a lot, like I mean especially like in today's kind of landscape, it, you know, it feels like everything's got like even within our own kind of like identities, sexualities, like race, everything is kind of like I guess that we think that we're kind of like diversifying like the possibility of like you know like how we label like certain like identities, people, but it's still quite restrictive in a way, like because it's still, you know, like it's still these kind of labels, and it's like which bodies kind of like fall in and fall out of this kind of categorization. You know, and again like in the, you know, like in the online realm, if certain bodies are kind of you know falling out of like the system, it's like, you know, like what happens then. And so yeah, it's something that I'm like that I think about all the time, and I think that it's a very kind of I mean, this is a whole other topic, but kind of like very scary and diversive kind of like landscape that we currently like live in, and we, you know, like we're surrounded by these very persuasive digital technologies, which, you know, can shape like our whole worldview about how we think about certain people or certain groups of people. Yeah.
Great, thank you.